I'm sorry, you know, yeah,
So, yeah.
That's crazy.
This house we're going to which is you've been there before. It's just she's that's his cell phone right there. How are No, I just
Yes, prevention. That's it. Yeah, such a wonderful So you do the targets.
So good evening. I'm going to come back to the microphone. Thank you all for coming. So this is the Orono Candidate Night Forum, and we're going to have the opportunity to meet and ask questions of members that are running for the school board. Jeff Wingard, which will be our first session, and then we'll have 4 candidates that are running for town council. Those 4 candidates are Terry Grenier, Daniel Lapointe, Lori Osher, and Adam Toothaker. My name is Mark Haggerty, and I get to have the fun opportunity to act as moderator tonight. And the timer is going to be on my left. This is Stephanie Welcomer. All questions and opening statements will be timed. We're going to start off with 2-minute opening statements, and then questions will be 1 minute for those. So the important role you're going to play is as questioners. And so first off, I'm going to say thank you for coming. It's a really crucial role of the questions you're going to ask. We ask you to ask respectful questions. Keep your questions brief, okay? Please stay on point with your question and try and minimize the preface to them. Each candidate will have an opportunity to ask the question, and hopefully you're not going to be asking a specific candidate, but it'll rotate. It'll be to the group of the candidates. And please be respectful above all, right? And I think we really need to thank all the candidates that are here for taking their time and willingness to volunteer for civic government, which is really crucial for us to be doing. So thank you.
So as timekeeper, just procedurally, I will hold up a yellow folder when there's 30 seconds left in the response, both for the 2-minute opening as well as the 1-minute question response. And then a red folder when there's 10 seconds left for the responder. And then I'll do some kind of hand motion if we get to the deadline. Okay? Is that clear?
Perfect.
Great.
And so we're going to start off with Jeff Wingard, who is running for school board. And if you have questions, I'm going to ask you to come orderly up to the podium after Jeff has given his opening statement. So Jeff, on you.
Thank you. So thank you for having me here. I think this is a great opportunity to meet my neighbors and for people to get to know me a little better. My name is Jeff Wingard. I live on Cromwell Drive, and I've lived in Orono for about 15 years. And I'm really motivated to participate in the community, and in particular in the schools in our community, because my wife and I are Orono residents by choice. She grew up in the Bangor area, but not in Orono, and I grew up down on the coast. And we found Orono sort of accidentally as students, and we decided to stay in Orono because we love the community, and in particular, we love the schools and wanted our children to grow up in the school district. So we've been around for a while, and I think we've established ourselves as people who care about this community. Personally, I've volunteered for the town in a number of different venues. I've sat on the school committee in the past, and I currently occupy an interim seat, a little partial seat that was vacated when a former school committee member moved out of the area. In addition to that, I've volunteered for the rec department and for Little League and for environmental cleanups, and I just really love this town. My commitment to education is not only personal, it's professional. I am a teacher, and I've been a student. I'm not a teacher in Orono, of course, but I am a teacher in the area, and I love working with young people and looking at how people learn. Okay, so that's me, right? So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Are there any questions?
I'm Frederica Smith. I'm an Orono resident. And what would you do to incorporate in the school's annual operating budget sufficient funds to try to decrease the risk of future backlog of deferred maintenance, which seems to have accumulated and is now being talked about as a major expensive bond issue?
Sure. Yeah, we're confronted with years of deferred maintenance, and I think to its credit, the superintendent and the school committee, and this predates my tenure on the school committee, have begun to set aside funds dedicated to try to work towards the resolution of that backlog. They've also set out a more thoughtful plan for addressing some of those issues. In the most recent round of renovation and facilities work, they've identified needs in tiers 1, 2, and 3 needs. And so however the facilities work goes on, I think at least we've begun to identify where the most critical needs in the school, and we've begun to set aside some dedicated budgetary or resources to address those.
And let me just make another announcement to those of you that are not here. We are also taking call-in questions, and you can call in to 889-6905, or you can do an email at info@orono.org. So those are two other ways, if you're not in the audience, to provide questions.
Questions on Facebook as well.
Okay?
Hi, Jeff. I'd just like to ask about your experience on the school board. And so part of it is, I guess I'd like to hear how you feel the school board operates and sort of what you feel in this interim position, your role has been in that, what the sort of challenges or benefits of or experiences that sort of illustrate how you've been able to work on the school board.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. I found the time that I've spent on the school board surprisingly pleasant. I mean, not that I expected it to be unpleasant, but I expected it to be far more sort of impersonal and institutional than it has been. And what I found is that the school committee, as it is currently configured, is a group of people that is uniformly dedicated to student-focused learning. So whatever other things are going on, right? Whatever paint needs to be put on the doors or grass needs to be mowed or anything else, right? The school committee has been very welcoming towards, putting students. It's a student-focused group, and I'm very happy to be part of that, I guess is the short version. Yeah.
Are there additional questions from the audience?
First of all, thank you for taking another turn in the barrel. That's always appreciated. The school district is talking about floating a $14 million bond issue for both the deferred maintenance and some new capital construction. And were this bond issue to be floated in that amount, how much do you anticipate the annual payments on principal and interest to be on that? And what would you anticipate that to result in terms of additional mill rate on the school's tax mill rate if that were all to be funded through property tax?
Yeah, well, thanks. And I wish I had the mill rate increase at my fingertips. And I know the school committee does have that. I do not have that at my fingertips right now, and I don't want to give you an improper figure. I do know that the original budget that we received at the end of the self-study was that the complete replacement cost for our schools, which are all beyond their lifespan, was $75 million. And about $75 million. And then when we spoke with the architects about a soup to nuts renovation, the bill came in at about $30 million. And so the school committee has set a target at about half that, and we've worked for several months to address that. So there will inevitably be a cost to that. And I wish there were a free lunch. But the cost is, we're all taxpayers too. So I think we're keeping the costs in mind, and we're trying to be very judicious and establish priorities and the only address the most critical priorities.
Thank you for standing there all by yourself. This really bothers me, a bond issue. Now, we have this is a separate corporate entity, has very little to do with the town, stands isolated. I need to kind of wrap my mind around this sort of a figure that's being said for the maintenance. Now, I think there's other ways to go about it, and I don't know if that's exactly the right way that's being said. I haven't monitored it very well. Do you know the cost per student in the school annually? Do you know that cost?
I don't know our per student cost. I know that our per student cost in Orono is slightly above the state average, and that's quite common among smaller school districts. Economies of scale often allow larger school districts to have lower per pupil costs.
Do you know how much above, by
I
chance,
do not.
in percentages? That'd be something very nice to know. You know, you're going to have a chance to speak out otherwise. I would also like to know that, to my understanding, it's what, 51% of the student body or something in that vicinity is students from outside of the community. Is that true?
That's true at Orono High School. It's not true throughout the district.
All right, well, that's at Orono. And the contribution, which that Orono receives for each of those students outside versus the total cost per student, has that ever been looked at, or are you familiar with that, sir?
So if you're asking me whether we make money or lose money on tuition students, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah. We don't lose money out of our budget based on tuition students.
And how does that happen? Because
Okay,
the community.
Dan, we want to give everybody an opportunity, so if you could keep it to one last question, please.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't think it's possible, but I'll try. Yes, sir. Okay, I'll be very respectful. What I'm asking is, who brings up the difference for those students? Out of us, out of the community, my taxes, these folks' taxes? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I think
something
I
I
understand what you're saying.
seriously want to understand.
I think the best way to say it is that while the per pupil cost of a student going to Orono High School is above the state average, the Orono schools have there's a net benefit to the Orono schools from recruiting students from sending communities.
Dollars and cents at some point, sir, okay? That's very important. I don't want to pay one more penny in taxes. Thank you.
Provision of the career and technical education is the buzz phrase these days for students who wish to pursue professions in the trades as opposed to a formal academic four-year program in college. What are your thoughts on the priorities that RSU 26 should place on providing such opportunities to our students? And what thoughts do you have whereby RSU 26 might even improve the effectiveness of its efforts in this area?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think career and technical education is actually one of the great opportunities that our students have, and we don't take advantage of it to the extent that we should. Unfortunately, our slots at United Technology Center are limited by our agreements, our regional agreements, and our students generally go as 11th and 12th graders. It would be incredible to give them the opportunity to participate in CTE more frequently and at younger ages. My own experience was that I started in shop class in 8th grade because it was in my school and we had it there. There's no way we can afford to staff and we can afford the tools and we can afford the space to reestablish the CTE programs that you and I probably remember. But there must be ways that we can link our students up with members of the community. Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie.
This is the 10-second.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there must be ways that through apprenticeships, through partnerships, and through internships, that we can get our students into the community working in the CTE.
I think you just got red carded.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
I was speaking with an administrator at RSU 26 and broached the concept of fiscal responsibility. And the individual responded that the school's responsibility was not fiscal responsibility. The responsibility was to provide programs and service, that the community desired, and that the fiscal responsibility took place at the polls. That we as citizens would define fiscal responsibility. Do you agree with that premise? If not, what would you describe as your priorities and your response to fiscal responsibility?
Sure. It may be true that a school administrator is most responsible for providing educational opportunities within his or her school. It is, however, also true that the school committee has kind of a split responsibility to facilitate development of those programs in the schools and to be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers. Everybody on the school committee is a taxpayer. And we understand that our role is to provide an economical and valuable, those aren't always the same thing, education for our students and the value to the community. There is a second opportunity for people to weigh in, and that is through the budgetary referendum process. So the board does exercise fiscal responsibility. It is absolutely, we are the first line of defense. However, the public also has a role in that.
So, for example, with this proposed bond that we might be having, and FYI, if I remember correctly, an increase of approximately $475,000 is an increase of 1 mil. So I think you're going to manage that with your bond issue. I'm not sure.
Yes.
1 mil. So if you have an increase of 1 mil just by the bond issue, would you consider cutting anything on your operational side that would make up for that so that there's a net neutral impact on the taxes?
Well, we're just beginning the budget process now. We had our preliminary budget meeting this week, and we'll continue to have budget talks all through. I don't think there's any zero-sum game out there. I don't think you can make up for 40 years of deferred maintenance by cutting your staff. I just don't think it's possible to do that. I mean, Orono runs a pretty lean ship. There's not a lot of fat in the budget. That said, it is our duty annually to review the operations of the schools to look for efficiencies. So just because the bond is on the table for one project does not mean that we are relieving ourselves of the obligation to look at our economic and fiduciary responsibilities for all other parts of the school system.
So you're saying that you would consider possible changes to your operating budget to compensate for the increase? Or you're saying that we'll suck up the increase along with maintaining, if not increasing?
No, I think what I'm saying, Judy, is that every year the board looks at ways to make the operating budget more streamlined. And the fact that there's this proposed bond and other facilities work going on doesn't affect the fact that we already have to and must and always look at how we can economize the operations in the school. Do I want to get rid of a particular program? I can't think of a program right now that I'm in favor of cutting. But are there places where we could operate more economically? I bet there are, and we should look at those.
So I've been asked, and it was, please make sure when you ask a question to provide your name.
Oh,
Those
sure.
in the audience know.
Glenn Roberts. Now, you just mentioned we've got 40 years of deferred maintenance. I don't know if you can answer in 2 minutes, but can you explain how we got to 40 years of deferred maintenance?
Sure. No. There are some things that in the system that have clearly been maintained, right? We have safe schools. Students are not in danger when they come into our buildings. There is access to most of the spaces in our buildings without impediment. We've done the minimum that we need to do to provide a structure to offer what is a great education. We punch above our weight in every educational metric in this district. But if you look at Asa Adams School, the T111 has fallen off the side. If you look at the number of entryways in the high school, they do not meet current safety recommendations, security recommendations. The Orono Middle School is well past its projected lifespan, and the way the high school and the middle school have sort of been cobbled together means that there are joints and gaps, and the roof lines don't match up, and there's ice dams that come up on the roof. It has been unplanned for a long time, and I don't put the blame for that on any particular person. I just think that we've been very concerned with developing a great educational program in town, and we have not always thought about where the housing for that educational program.
But this isn't new.
It's not.
I mean, we just didn't wake up and go, holy crap, the T111 is falling off.
Well, we may.
I mean, why does that get deferred year after year? So now we're at this point, we've got 40 years of, how are we going to fix this? And now we want to float a $14 or $30 million bond. I guess what I'm asking is, you got to do what you got to do for the kids, for the schools, of course. But like going forward in the budget and the thinking, does it make more sense? We have to allocate X so that we're not sitting here again another 10 years trying to float a $15 million bond because we let 40 years of accumulation get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Who's watchdogging this?
Well, I hear you, and I think we have a board and an administration that are making that a priority now, which is why this facility now.
Yeah.
I can't speak to the past, but now, and there is a facilities director position in the school department now, which has not existed in the past. I just think the eye was not on that ball. Of all the balls that were being juggled, that was maybe not one that was in the forefront. And when cuts were made, it's easier to cut something that doesn't talk back, or make a cut to something that's not sitting in a desk. Hopefully we go forward with a better plan.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions from the audience?
Awesome.
Okay, well, and Jeff, I want to thank you very much, and I want to thank the audience for their excellent questions. We're going to take about 3 to 5 minutes as we reposition ourselves and all the candidates come down safely, and then we'll start back up.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff.
and followed with 1-minute closing statement at the end. Please say your name when you ask a question.
And we'll hold applause.
And hold all applause until the end. All right? We have to really appreciate what these people are willing to do for us. It's really amazing. Okay, so thank you very much. And as you can see, the order of tonight, we're going to start off with Terry Grenier, Lori Osher, Dan Lapointe, and then Adam Toothaker.
Good evening. My name is Terry Grenier, and I would like to take a few moments here to introduce myself. First, I'm from a large family in Aroostook County. We were a poor family, but my family raised us to realize that we were rich with the people who were around us. After I graduated from high school in 1986, I enlisted in the U.S. Army and was stationed in Alaska. While I was there, I received 2 Army Commendation Medals and was awarded the title of Brigade Soldier of the Month twice. In 1991, I left the military with an honorable discharge and went on to work for Hawaiian Airlines as an operations manager at Anchorage Airport. In 1996, I was recruited by a consulting firm in Anchorage to train office managers for different Native corporations. Then in 1999, I decided to leave the employee world and create a personal care services business with another partner. In 2006, Inc. magazine recognized our business as one of the Inc. magazine's 500 fastest growing companies in the country. Our business, Immediate Care, was ranked number 18. It is also worth mentioning that while I was doing that, I was also very active in the Anchorage Rotary. In 2005, I moved back to Maine, and in 2006, opened the Irish Setter Pub in Presque Isle, and then also opened Eye Care Pharmacy, which is a mail-order pharmacy located in Fort Fairfield in 2007. Shortly after that, in 2010, I was nominated and then received runner-up for Aroostook County Entrepreneur of the Year. Even though I've been very busy, I still found time to be on Rotary in Fort Fairfield, Kiwanis in Presque Isle, and then being elected as a town councilman for Fort Fairfield. While this was all going on, my husband of 10 years and I were looking for a right community to relocate to be closer to our 5 grandchildren. In 2015, we found Orono and immediately fell in love with the people and the culture and the graciousness that is Orono. We loved it so much that we bought our house on Middle Street and are happy that we did. I know I have given you a lot of information. You can see that I have all the attributes that a community would want in a councilman, and thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Osher. I'm an Orono Town Councilor. I ran for council in a year and 4 months ago because there was an open seat, and that seat has a 3-year term, and that term ends in March. And so I'm running again, hoping to continue to serve Orono as a town councilor. I moved to Orono in 1999 to be a professor at the University of Maine. I was an environmental science professor there for 9 years. And I left the university and opened a business. So I'm a local business owner. My business makes, our work is to help people make their homes and offices more energy efficient. So when I ran for council, one of the things I said was a priority for me is to look at the ways in which our town can be more energy efficient. Because of in my work, I'm always looking at buildings. That's one of the things that I'm interested in doing, is lowering our carbon footprint and the energy use. Let's see. So that's one of the things that I was working on, and I'm very pleased to say that we've moved that forward. The town has given our energy information to some contractors that are looking at ways in which we can use solar to collect solar energy so we can produce our electricity here on our landfill or maybe on our buildings, and then lower both our carbon footprint and our energy costs. The other thing I worked on when I knocked on doors the last time I was running, many people told me that they wanted more to see an indoor farmers market in the winter. It was part of the comprehensive plan. It was listed in the plan, which came out in 2014, and it hadn't happened yet. So I worked with those people in the town and the town council, the town manager and the economic development coordinator, and we now have an indoor farmers market at the Asa Adams Gym, and that just started in January. So I feel like I've had some success, and I want to continue being on the town council to try to have more success.
Hello, I'm Dan Lapointe, U.S. Merchant Marine, retired. Someday I'll go back. You vote me in, not for a few years, thank you. looking at the community, we need an oversight board on where our tax dollars are spent. It needs to, we need to have a forensic auditing program, and it should be a board made up of the residents. Our taxes are precious, and we need to have this oversight. Now, I'm not saying to be ahead of everything. I'm saying to be slightly behind it. But that gives an accountability for not duplication of services or others that have changed and are no longer doing their original purpose. This is very much goal-orientated. What is the community's goal for children and activities and programs? You know, we had one fantastic rec program here. Where did it go? Where did the money go? And where is it now? This is a big issue and no small thing. I think we'd like to work to see about getting that back. The town council must work harder for this oversight over our schools. And I would suggest a volunteer corps doing work at the school, like an Army Corps of Engineers within our community. You have no idea the resources that exist here because the question has never been asked. Thank you.
How's it going, folks? Thanks for showing up tonight. I'm Adam Toothaker. I grew up on the coast in Harpswell, Maine, and at 20 years old, I ran off and joined the Marine Corps for what I thought was going to be a 4-year enlistment, but it turned into a 20-year career. In the Marine Corps, I traveled around the world a few times, deployed to various hotspots, met and married my wife, raised 2 daughters, earned my bachelor's degree, and retired as a chief warrant officer. Throughout my career, I always knew I'd end up back in Maine, which I love for the same reason everyone else loves Maine: the small population and natural, undisturbed beauty. It's for those reasons my wife and I have grown very fond of Orono as well. I've recently become involved with the Orono Land Trust as a way to pay back for my heavy year-round use of the trail system. So that's me, and that's why I'm here living in Orono. But why I'm here tonight is because I'm suggesting a course correction, specifically on how we raise revenue. The mill rate, as you all know now, is in Orono is 27, which is the highest in the area and much higher in the county or state average. However, just over 50% of the land in Orono is taxable. The comprehensive plan calls for us to look at other ways to raise revenue, but keep circling back to ideas like expanding the tax base and using tools like tax incremental financing, or TIF. Last year, I read in the Bangor Daily News that the town of Howland was able to lower taxes while increasing benefits. So I called up the town manager and we talked for about an hour about how, since that article had come out, the town was able to lower their mill rate from 23 to 19 by a bunch of creative solutions, but mainly by entering contracts with other towns and hospitals and using their EMS ambulances to transport non-emergency patients. Last year, they made over $1 million. That is the kind of action we need to take if we're going to combat issues like our ever-increasing school budget and pending bonds, or the state's inability to fund its share of K-12 education or the revenue sharing program. I'm retired now, and I've got plenty of time to dedicate to this position, and I have a keen interest in seeing this town succeed. I think I'm the right man for the job, and I'm looking forward to serving the people of Orono.
Thank you all. So if you have questions, please come up, wait your turn, ask a question at a time, and when first person's done, you can ask a second question later on. So does anyone have a question? And again, please give your name as you ask the questions.
My name is, it's still Paul Smith. I'm a resident of Orono. Upon being elected to a public office, comes or should come the realization to the effect of, oh my goodness, they said yes, now what am I going to do? So how would you go about, if elected to the town council, figuring out what to do next?
Thank you. Actually, I've been on a town council before, so I'm very familiar with the processes of how the local government works. I always try to keep in mind that there are, well, in this case, there's 7 individuals who are part of that whole process that have been elected that always have the best interests of the individuals who live within this community. And I want to make sure that I'm mindful of that and working collectively with them to whatever decisions that come up, that we do the best decisions for you as a community.
Great question. It's an honor to serve on the town council, and I find with each meeting that each of the town councilors is very thoughtful about the work that we do. When I started, it was November, and I had all these ideas, and everyone else was, we have to really worry about the budget, and the budget is coming up. So my idea is I had to wait to see how the budget process went. So in March is actually when we begin the budget process, and we go over, we have the people who work for the town spend time identifying what they think are the most important things that must be spent and where we can save money in their departments, and they review that with us, and we all weigh in on whether or not the things that they've proposed are what we should be doing. And so we spend a lot of time deliberating, and as Terry said, there's 7 people, and plus we get the advice of our staff. We have a pretty impressive staff here in Orono.
Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." One of the most finest speeches that exist. It was all colors, all races. It was under one country. We're the greatest country in the nation. I mean, in the world. Our nation has opportunities, none such. If we socialize every single program, the opportunity to hear other voices will be silenced because it will be politically correct to do so. There's a wealth of information in nursing homes. There's a wealth of information in veteran facilities. There's a wealth of information in schools. Even our children, out of the mouths of babes come the most intelligent things sometime. They're not censored. We have a right of a militia, and that's under the assessor's department. That militia can be a corps, a group of volunteers within our community. Thank you.
What would I do if elected, I think is the question. I've been coming to the town council meetings for about a year now, because about a year ago is when I started thinking about my taxes, and I had recently retired, so I had a little bit of time on my hands, and I started coming to the town meetings. So I'm pretty familiar with how they work. I go to some of the budgeting meetings. I've gone to some of the committee meetings, so I'm pretty familiar with how it works. My plan would be to just jump right in and get on as many committees as I can and see what kind of a difference I can make right off. Thanks.
So we have a question that's been emailed or called in. What is your opinion on spending? Do you consider funding a want or a need? This is the question. Was roundabout a want or a need? Was the park lot downtown a want or a need? So that's the first question.
Thanks so much for the question, and I'm really pleased to have people are emailing, calling, and are here. It's wonderful to have that community involvement. The roundabout was a plan that was developed before I got on the council, but my understanding is that it was a way to relieve the pressure that they had from driving that was caused by having so many new units with people who were driving that were on the other side of Park Street. And so that was the cost of designing it actually was quite low because we partnered with the university, and the university students did a lot of the work on that. It was a need, and we also got federal, I think, or state or federal money that helped with it. And of course, the university was a partner in that. And the parklet, I think that was a very low cost project of way to show that there's things that we can do in our town to make it have more public spaces, and the comprehensive plan suggested that we have more parks and public spaces for the size of our community.
I think the turn circle was a phenomenal waste of money, resources, and time. What we needed to do was go across the field. It's on the north eastern side of the campus, go right straight across, and all the way through the development over across Bennett Road to the interstate. That would instantly take traffic from Old Town, traffic from the university, traffic from the interstate. The cost, if it was even looked at, would have been comparable and superior. As far as these idealistic little parks, you know, we have a veteran now in the cemetery from the Civil War. We have sanctuary cities, which is a form of secession. We have a problem there. Thank you very much.
I might be reading too much into the question, but I think when they're talking about wants and needs, they're talking about the process of how we come up with ideas and how to spend money. And I've been, like I said, I've been coming here for about a year now, coming to the different meetings, and there are little hot button issues where a whole bunch of people will show up for it. But then for the normal humdrum governance, there's not a lot of input. So I see that the town and the councilors a lot of time are making decisions in kind of a vacuum. They're doing what they can. And I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to get on anybody's good graces. I mean, I've been coming here and I see what they're doing and I see what they're trying to do. And that door is never locked. So every time I've come here, I've always been able to come in, grab a seat. And if I had something to say, I could say it. And the invitation's always open.
I'm going to assume that through this process, when the roundabout was put in, that it was thought through extensively, and it ended up being, I feel, an amazing asset to the community, simply because I travel that space a lot, and it is heavily congested, and I've noticed that it's kind of relieved a lot of that. As for parklet type things, I'm completely in favor of them. I think that provides a quality of life within a community that if they want to thrive, it just adds to that coziness and comfort of living in a small community.
My name is Brian McGill. What do you see as the role of the schools in the town, and then also the relationship of the town government to the school government?
I'm not sure I understood completely the question, but I'll answer it as best I can. Town governance is we the people. We the people are the town. First, school is an extension of that. Now, we've got a lot of influences from a lot of different sources, and I feel even a confiscation of our right to educate our children. Our schools will run well, and the children came out with home economics and trades. They fulfilled a need within our society. Today, the singular nature is again socialistic, and it has limited the potential of what we need in our community, and our citizenry's input has been silenced. Thank you.
So school's role in the town and relationship with within the town. So obviously the school's role in the town is to educate the youth, and the relationship within the town. Before I got here, I understand that it used to be a school administrative district and was actually a department of the town, and now it stands alone. I don't have an opinion either way of whether that works or doesn't work. It's still going to have a budget. The only thing that was different before was the town had, the council actually had input on that budget. They could say, that's too much money. Is that possibly where the deferred maintenance came from for 40 years? There were too many people trying to do it? I don't know. But as for the role in the town, it is primarily for the safety and education of the youth of this town.
So I'm obviously going to be learning more about how the relationship is currently with the town and the school. My experience from past government in Fort Fairfield was that we had a very close relationship with our school. They were responsible for providing us with their budgets. We'd sit with them collectively. There was a set amount or percentage of our taxes that went to the school. If there were different ways that we had to kind of adjust things accordingly to those types of things of like deferred maintenance and such, we would make those accommodations as we went. But it was a very intimate relationship with the school.
That's what the role of the schools in the town. I think that the school is the heart of the town.
Can't hear you. Oops, sorry. Hello. Sorry about that. I think the school is the heart of the town. And I know that there are many people that choose to live in Orono because of our fabulous schools. And I know that I chose that. I looked at many academic institutions, and I chose UMaine because of Orono. I looked at this as a fabulous place. My children who are here in the audience have been in the Orono schools since kindergarten, and it's an essential relationship. And obviously, more than half of our budget goes to support those schools. And so I'm pleased that we have such great schools, and I think they have an important role in our town.
Glenn Roberts. To each of the count, besides taxes, what do you think is the most pressing problem for the town?
Is there anything besides taxes? No. Right now, I know in the comprehensive plan, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. People hear a comprehensive plan and they start talking about, affordable housing in the town and trying to get more school-age children to the town so we can put them in the school. So I would say that is probably one of the biggest things right now. The comprehensive plan also spells out fairly clearly that there is a need in the on the west side of town to keep wide open tracts of land for animal habitat and all that. So it's trying to balance our need for bringing some more folks in and keeping the open green spaces that everybody loves about Maine and everybody loves about coming to Orono.
So having looked also at the comprehensive plan, I kind of come from an economic standpoint of things. So I look at the town and think of how we grow it. And one of the things that keeps kind of sticking out of my mind is that we've done really well with making sure that our senior population has great housing. People with lower income have got good housing for them. There's also for the school students, there's their population's taken care of with plenty of housing options. However, where we lack a bit is on the younger, the person who's just graduated, looking to be in the community, wants to stay here, but there's like no type of place for them that's like not 5 people in a unit, just a single place, condo style. So I kind of like that's one that draws attention to me. If we want our economy to grow, we need to have our younger graduates be staying here.
I'm with Terry on that. I think that the housing in Orono is the housing that's under the median income, the median housing price, so under $150,000. That those houses, because we had so many that were rental properties that had deferred maintenance, and now with so much new housing for college students, those rental properties are quite decrepit, run down in many cases, and that's the housing available for people right out of college, and so it takes a lot for them to fix them up. So I think that's a problem, and one thing that we need to do is to figure out how to make it easier for people to buy into Orono when they don't have a lot of cash and own homes and fix them up.
It's hard to get away from taxes being the most important thing. Wasn't too many years ago, $600 was the whole tax burden. Now one lot out of half a dozen, $6,000. That's horrendous. And we're only talking 15 16 years. This stewardship, this idealistic stewardship, this politically correct stewardship is mindless and waste money left and right. We have more land set aside in land trusts. There's only 4 places in the entire state that's like this. This is enhanced, and we need to de-hance the comprehensive plan and its goals. We need to enhance the community and its viabilities. Senior housing isn't socialistic track cubicles where they're imprisoned, but their homes, staying in their homes. Thank you.
Tim Waring. I think it's easy for us as taxpayers, and it's easy for anyone in a political office or running for political office to lean on the simple thing of, well, we don't want to spend your money, right? So that's easy. We've heard a lot of that tonight. Those are the easy choices, right? Is to say, we don't want to spend your money. I think the hard choice, right, as a leader, is when you do want to spend money, right? When you say, I will spend public money to achieve something important. So I think I'd like to turn the question upside down that we've been hearing a lot of, and to hear what is it that is important to you, that would be so important in the governing of this town, that you would be willing to increase the taxes that we charge our citizens in order to make the town work. I think it's an important idea. I'd like to hear how that connects with your vision for the town.
Thank you. So I see it as an opportunity that we need to be looking at getting our younger people to stay here. I mean, it's no mystery. We have an issue in Maine in general with our aging population, and I think that there really has to be a mindset that you have to invest in some form to get people to be incentivized to stay here. What that is, I'm not sure. I'm sure that the townspeople would be best to kind of be part of that. I think that we do spend a little bit too much of the time talking about cut, but we also have to admit we live in an amazing town. And reason why people want to live here is because it is that way. So yeah, I would be okay with adding monies to figure out a way to keep more of the youth here and raise their families and have businesses.
Great question. I think that before we go into any budget discussion, that it's important to understand, to set our mission and what our ethics are, because really how we spend money is a descriptor of what we think is the most important. So what we spent the most money on, we've decided that's the most important. And you know, there's politics at all levels of government, but here at the local level, we have very clear things that are a mandate that we are doing for, you know, Brian asked the school. That's a very important mandate of our local government. And so for my thing is, how does it connect with my vision? My vision is that we should have these 7 of us have a discussion of what our ethics are and what we think are the most important things, and then move from there.
I think fiscal responsibility will develop sufficient funds for our growth for the future. Our vision, it needs to be new. And how do you attract something new if you're going to apply the same thing again and again till 15 years later? We have to take $14 million in a bond to replace a building that nobody had the sense to look at and say, oh, this is a problem ahead of time. That's why citizenry involvement in a financial committee with oversight for our tax dollars makes a lot of sense for doing what our needs are and seeing where the needs are. Thank you.
What is so important that I'd raise taxes? That's the question. You know, every time you come to these and you hear people talking, they'll always tell you it's a balance between taxes and services, and they'll always talk about this. But, I think there's a third option. Like I said in the beginning, there are already towns in Maine that have other ways of raising revenue. So I don't think it boils down to needing to be, I either pay a ton of taxes or I don't have any services. I don't think it's that way at all. And I only had the one example, but I'm sure there are a ton out there that we would accept other input for things that we could do. Investments, like an investment into one of those ambulances that we could use to raise money, I think would be a good expenditure of town money, something like that, but not just spending money. I'm not a big fan of that.
Connie Carter, how do you see that the town could reduce our carbon footprint, or do you think we should?
Thank you, Connie, for asking that question. I'm sure that our town can reduce carbon footprint. If you look across Maine, their carbon footprint in a municipality or in people's homes and their lives, it's transportation, it's heating and cooling, it's electrical. Those are things that at the municipality level, we have those costs. And in all of those, there's ways to reduce costs. And so for our electric, one way is to collect energy from the sun. And even if we don't own those panels, one possibility is that the company installs them and they own the panel, then we have reduced our carbon footprint, even if we get that electric from the solar panel instead of from Emera. And the buildings can be more energy efficient. In general, buildings are leaky because of deferred maintenance, because of lack of expertise. And so usually buildings can be cut by 35%, the cost of heating them by just fixing them in a way that's focusing on the carbon footprint. So
I wouldn't have such a hard time with carbon footprint if there wasn't derivatives financially attached to it on nations. Before man ever walked the earth, there was ice ages and there was warm times. Well, I'm not saying that automobile pollution isn't offensive and stacks are not offensive, or a river full of sludge and we can't eat the fish. All of that is good stewardship. But I'm saying this council allowed the hydros to be taken over and ripped out and never said a word. Our river hydropower was diminished and they chose to do so. This is sad. 4 cents, 2.5 cents a kilowatt. You tell me what your bill reads today. Thank you.
I agree with Lori that solar panels are a good idea. I just put them on my house last December, so I think they're fantastic. But another thing is education, because like if you ever go into the dentist office and they have those little things and they show, hey, you're drinking Powerade and it's got this much sugar in it, it actually changes the way you think about things. And I know I've seen pamphlets before. It says, look, if you're thinking about just going out for a pizza tonight, you are going to expend this much carbon to go get that pizza. So maybe plan that trip out a little bit differently. And stuff like that does have an impact. So I would say, education would be the way to go.
I think Orono actually does pretty good at this already. One of the things that I noticed that communities really don't do, or usually comes at a cost, is to factor into your taxes the ability to have your recycling done every other week. That everybody's pretty much participating in it, and I find that as a great start. The other thing is public transportation here is fairly good. You may want to look at the hours of operations for the students to make sure that it's covering their needs and stuff. But that right there takes the carbon footprint and kind of reduces it a little bit. I'm also kind of a fan of solar panels at some level, but it for most people it's cost prohibitive, and until it gets to that point to where it is a product that people in general can afford, or there's some assistance with it, then we look at it at that point. Thank you.
Brian McGill again. We've been talking about budgets a lot. And I've heard a bit about revenue, which any responsible board is going to look at revenue and pay attention to revenue. But I find that in a lot of cases, those opportunities have already been taken up. So I think you'll find, saying as somebody who sits on the school board, that in the end, it's mostly going to be about taxes and expenses. So I would like to know, since the expense budget of this town is hardly a secret, it's an open document, it's discussed in public, it's discussed, over the air on meetings, what concrete change you would make to the expense side of the budget in this town, since most of you have expressed some dissatisfaction with the current status.
I tend to disagree slightly with the premise of this question. It isn't a closed circle. It isn't a pie to be divvied up, and it isn't finite. It's infinite if we embrace other thoughts. Unfortunately, it's pretty narrow when you get stuck in the weeds. I disagree that the expense side is fixed also. Wholly. I think the oversight needs to be done. And it's been said other services to other communities can be contracted. Co-ops are a nice idea. And there are so many things that could be explored to bring money into this community from other areas that isn't being done today. Thank you.
One big thing I saw when I went through the budgeting process last year, sitting over there, was I noticed that, the town basically gets a bill from the county, gets a bill from the RSU. The council sits up here, Sophie sits over there, and they go through everything that the town probably needs, and it gets all approved. And at the end is when you get the tax rate. You get the mill rate at the very end of that. It's opposite of how we run the budget at my house, and probably how most people do it. I know how much money I have to spend first, but then I do that. So the one change that I would try to get made is we would change the order of how that's done. We find out how much the RSU is going to charge, find out how much the county is going to charge, and then give direction to the town that this is how much we're spending. So come up with some plans, something we can work with, and we'll vote on that.
I'm sure it's no different than owning a business. So as a business owner, I have responsibilities that we have on our budget, and those are defined at the beginning of a season or a year. But I'm not really familiar with a lot of what the expenses are or how that works out on the balance sheets and the profit and loss statements for the town. However, I would be one that would actually kind of just look into all that with the other members of this council. I could only say that I believe that they look at that as citizens also, to make sure it's in the best interest of this town, that they're not doing something that's not making sense. And if there's any kind of questions, I'm sure that they're going to ask it of them or of you or whomever it is.
I sat through the budget process last year. I didn't find anything that I'd say, what? You don't need to cut that. You need to cut that expense. No, I think that our town is running very lean and doing things that are helping us to do better with less. And the reason we had to do better with less is because there was revenue sharing was decreased from the state. And one of our town councilors serves on a committee for the Maine Municipal Association that gives input into the legislature of what we're looking for. And he's just come back from a meeting and said, do we all agree we're looking for more revenue sharing? And I think with our new governor that we have a chance of having money that was taken, that we used to use from the state to fund our town. And so I haven't found things. I have things that I say, I want us to do more for energy efficiency, for diversity, for supporting people in our town. And we don't have the cash to do the things that I would like to do. But I think with revenue sharing that we'll be able to get money coming from the state that will help us offset the costs of doing what we do well here. And I think we do a lot well.
Yes, so there's an additional question. Do you well, I kind of feel like so this is an overlap, but I think it's distinct enough to ask. Do you consider the school budget, or how do you consider the school budget when establishing the municipal budget?
How does it currently go, or how is it?
I'm going to interpret.
Okay.
I think basically the question is asking, how does council encompass and consider, deliberate about the school budget when it's doing the overall budget?
Sure. I mean, and Lori can probably talk more on this, but currently that is after the town decides everything it needs to run the town. We get a bill from the county, we get a bill from the RSU, and then we establish a mill rate. And that's the one thing that I would try to change if it's even possible. But that's the one thing I would try to change. I would do it in a different order and find out what those other bills are, and then find out how much money we have to work with, and give direction to the town manager. We don't want to raise the taxes this year. So work with what you got.
I currently am not familiar with what the town council currently does with the school budgets. But having said that, I would be just another individual who will be part of that process to make sure that they're doing the right stuff.
The town budget, the school budget gets voted on by the voters, and then that amount that the voters approve, that comes to the town, and we need to cover those costs. And as I said, the town is running lean in that we have many, our firefighters have to be trained in hazmat and as first responders and as firefighters. And so they run the ambulance. And in other towns that are larger, they have different crews that do those things. So we have very well-trained people who are wearing many hats, and that's in many of our departments. So I like the idea that we would say, oh, how much do we have to spend, how much do we have so we don't have to raise taxes? But we've been, as revenue sharing was decreased, we've been trying to do the best that we can to continue the services that we've had in the town. And so when people mention that the services have decreased, it's pretty impressive how much we've been able to keep, considering how much less money has been coming from the state to help us.
You please kind of brief the question again. Thank you.
So this was something that was emailed or phoned in. How do you consider the school budget when establishing the municipal budget?
Thank you. It's pretty hard to do and deal with a mandate that's already been decided. One line, yes and no, get to vote on. You know, the real input is compliance to how many different agencies? Everybody's got their hands out. I do know for a fact that Orono is one of the last communities to pay its county bill. What is it? Holding the money to collect 8% before it puts it in there. I don't think that's a very fiscal, good, responsible place to be. Rollover and complying to demands, socialistic demands. I have a hard time with that. Let's look at it hard. Make sure that that isn't what we have to do. Thank you.
Stephanie, we're starting to lose half the audience here. You got to liven up the questions.
Okay, well, we've got a cannabis question. There is a cannabis question that was phone/emailed in. What are your views on Orono allowing retail sales of marijuana?
Always an issue that is pretty polarized. I mean, people, if you talk to any individual, you're going to get 2, 3, 4 different thoughts on this. I always go with that if our town looks at that it definitely has to be a collective group of individuals from different backgrounds, for different thought processes, to kind of work to what is right for the community. In the past, when I've seen this in other communities, there's usually people very, very passionate about their belief or their side, with not keeping their mind open to the possibilities of somebody else's thoughts. So if we do something, think about something like this, I think it does involve many different mindsets to be coming together as one.
I've had people contact me by email, and all the counselors we've gotten emails about people's concerns about public sales, retail of marijuana. We are going to have public meetings where people can come and give their presentation, their thoughts. It's something we have to deal with on a specific zone. So we'd be talking about individual zones in the town, and whether that zone is a place that we would allow individual kinds of business related to marijuana. So the retail sales are the ones that we've had most comments about, and the school board has just made a decision that they would like to let us know their thoughts, that they don't want retail sales in the village commercial district. And so that's actually the kind of input people should be giving us, is saying in this particular kind of zone, because that's how our ordinances would be written. So we're open to hearing what people want. This is your town.
Zones of thinking. I love the idea of grassroots businesses and all the nice dollars that it could bring in. But guess what we did? We shut down secondhand smoke in this community. Here, 4/22/2017, right here is a sanctuary city. It took about 80 veterans in this room screaming at the people to shut it down, sanctuary city. To say that ICE agents couldn't work here and do their job. We have a serious problem here, folks. Are we suggesting that you can vape and not have secondhand smoke? Is that intelligent? Maybe. I don't know anything about it. But it's nice to talk about it. I like dollars. Thank you.
You have no possible idea how much background there is to this in the town of Orono. We've sent poor Kyle back there and Dave Milan all over the state looking at different places where they sell marijuana to see what a good answer for this state would be, or for this town would be. I am 100% for the sale of medical marijuana, and later when the state gets around to allowing the sale recreational marijuana in this town. We already have rules and regulations on the sale of alcohol. We already have rules and regulations on the sale of cigarettes and who can buy it. You still can't drive drunk. You can't go into the establishment unless you're 21 years old. I don't see a real big problem with it. And like Dan was talking about, it is another source of revenue. It is another business in the town. Orono right now, as it stands, is a town of bars. One of the counselors even called it a mecca of microbrews. And I don't hear anyone trying to make this a dry town. So I'm for it.
Are there any questions in the audience?
It's really hard to sit. This is Judy Sullivan. It's really hard to sit and listen to things, and want to be able to say something. I cannot, just give me a minute. I want to clarify a couple of things. The roundabout, Route 2 is a state road. That was Department of Transportation. That was not a decision that the town of Orono made. They were involved, they were invited to give their opinion, and they were able to help with some design on that, but that was a Department of Transportation decision. The relationship with the school budget and the town budget. Orono's RSU is an RSU of 1, unlike other RSUs with other schools. It's an RSU of 1. But because it's still an RSU, they create a budget that they give to the town. And the town, if you want to know how my experience being on the council was, the town then looked at their budget and said, gee, we can't raising taxes like that is too much at one fell swoop. What can the town do? Because the school gives us a budget and the the county gives a budget. So if you want to control taxes at that point in time, that's where the town has been left ever since I was on the council for 9 years, was that what can the town give up to maintain a reasonable level of taxes? There, I've said that. Now, I have a question. The town budget is predominantly made up of personnel. Operating costs are really pretty minor. It's pretty hard to trim our operating costs because they're minor compared to the personnel cost. Personnel costs in the town of Orono basically represents services that we provide. So if you can't increase revenue, then you kind of have to have a balance. If you want to have a balanced budget, you have to look at expenses. So it's never a popular thing to do, but if you had to consider cutting something, within our budget and the services that we provide, how would you go about doing that? And what criteria would you be looking at to value a service that's being provided? If it could be a good service with higher level of service, what would you do? Is there room in a budget that you can think of, the services that we provide that could be trimmed?
I guess I thought I answered this when Brian asked how would I reduce expenses, and my feeling is that I am impressed with how little it costs for all the services that we get right now, and my thought is not to reduce expenses. I think that we should be encouraging more businesses to come to Orono, and that might take money to actually partner with businesses to get them to move here. So I already answered. I think there's not much to cut, but if you, I'm going to come clean. I think that we need more businesses here, and I think that those businesses will end up increasing our taxes, and that will be good for the town. And so that might yeah, that's what I think.
Could I give a specific example of something that I was concerned about?
Let's let everybody answer the question and you can have a follow-up, please.
I'm really excited to hear what she was going to ask. That's okay. Let's take it all, bring it. That's what we're here for. The idea that, services can be questioned. If somebody suggests that I'm going to put a paper trash bag out there for trash collection, I'm not going to be happy. I think that there is services contractually that we are offered that I think are exorbitant. And the idea that, our personnel are going to be stripped down. I had an unfortunate situation where we had the ambulance crew, the fire crew come on. My shock was that there was 2 people in the ambulance, 2 people in the fire truck, policemen in support. That was the team. There was no volunteer fire department. The other community was called in because of the time. I was insulted by that lacking of planning. Thank you.
Judy, I'm going to hijack your question a little bit. I know you want
Please.
a direct answer, but the way I'm going to tell you how I envision the process going is if we said, all right, we're not going to raise taxes. This is what you got. Work with this. And I would, and in my head, this is how I see Sophie coming to the table and going, all right, I've got 3 different plans. Because that's how we used to do it when I was in the Marine Corps. You would always come with 3 courses of action. Say, here you go. This is the most preferred. This one is going to hurt the least, but these other are viable. And then there's a discussion about it. And then at the end, we choose one, and that's how it goes. So I hate to be evasive on it, but I don't have a particular thing. But that's how I see the process going.
Good.
So Judy, I'm kind of sensing that you were saying going from a personnel side, if I'm reading you correctly. So if if the personnel side is the focal point, I would look at what is revenue producing positions, because those are usually the ones that are better for a situation, but not always going to be that way. But can you combine positions too? Do we have people that are working in positions? Are they overworked? Are they underworked? Could they take on more? I'm not really familiar with what exactly is going on. Taking it to a different side, though, I don't know if we've exhausted every opportunity of doing co-work or co-sharing with other communities to look at certain services that we pay for that may cut that cost, to kind of give you a little bit of relief on the tax side of it.
One of the things I guess I'm going to hone in on is service, for example. I mean, the concept is the concept of service creep, and what do we provide? So, for example, we still pick up brush for our people. Used to be that was something that was done in a private enterprise, actually, taxpayer money coming in from a private enterprise. So we do that for our citizens. Snow removal. I don't know what the standard is, but I don't think there's very much snow on the ground when the plows go out. So the objective is to have perfectly clear roads. Sidewalks are cleared within 24 hours. And snow machines are bought, I don't know how many sidewalk clearing machines we end up buying to try to keep up with that demand. Those are the types of things I'm talking about, that type of service. There's compromise on that. And it's very frustrating if you live outside of the village district in West Orono. We have no snow sidewalks to be done. There are all kinds of different things that happen. And so it's frustrating sometimes to have this level of service that we're paying taxes for. That's what I was looking at as examples. So is there anything you could respond to in that regard, or did I just said it for you? I don't know. But I know that's a real intent in this town to attract people into town, but how do you balance that desire with a tax base that makes other places look much more attractive?
There are places that have early obsolescence of machinery. Massachusetts is one of them. Any dump truck on the road is early retirement. It isn't so in Maine. Maine, we hold on to it longer. Those things can be bought for a song. Military has equipment. I mean, fine vehicles, Oshkosh. It used to be Autocar. I don't even know if they make them anymore. But all of that can be acquired and relatively reasonably, and so we don't have a big capital expenses. The other thing is your people, not everybody can be a plowman. Not everybody can do the service as far as trash or whatever else have you, and contractually. But subcontracting is great. Co-ops are great. Multiple communities are great. We can explore these things and save money. Thank you.
Yeah, Judy, I know what you're talking about. After coming to a couple of the meetings, I went home and told my wife, I'm pretty sure every one of the councils is from in town, because they talk about sidewalks an awful lot. And if you live out where we are, you're not talking about sidewalks, right? So I was pleased recently to go to one of the meetings and hear that the priorities for snow removal, sidewalks is way down at the bottom. And they do get a lot of phone calls, and people are upset that if there's a few flakes on the sidewalk, they want it cleared off right now. And understandably, that's not possible, right? So there is a prioritization of that. That's one of the big purchases that actually led me to start down this road of being here tonight, was when I went to one of the council meetings, and we bought a brand new Holder municipal tractor for clearing off the sidewalks for $150,000 in one big shot. And I said, well, if I was there, I would have voted against that, but I don't know how much impact that would have had. Thanks.
Well, services are always going to be more important for the individual, dependent on where they're at. depending on who they have in their family. I mean, I can easily say, maybe that sidewalk would be important for me as a citizen who lives in town and not for somebody who lives out of town. It could also be said the same thing about whether or not you have a child, and somebody who doesn't have a child can say, like, I pay a lot of taxes and I have no kids that go to school. But that's all collectively just part of why we're in a community together. We know that our money goes to the community. We have to kind of work complete with everybody, no matter where we're at, what part of the town we're in. And it's still going to be about, like, when I was in Fort Fairfield, we actually went to old military establishments and we found equipment that we got for almost nothing. So if that was something that kind of would help, we could always look at stuff like that. But as a citizen, you should come forward if you feel like the town is being neglectful on spending the money.
Well, I'm going to hijack the question a little bit because I think that we haven't discussed the university. The university doesn't have to pay taxes. They do give us some money, and we're the only town that has a university campus that gets money as a municipality from the university system. So the town manager and our council in general is loath to upset them and have them take away the money they do give us, since we're different than all the other campuses. But they don't give us that much money. If they were paying taxes, they'd be giving us a lot more money. And many of the things that we do is because we are servicing 10,000 people who are not necessarily residents of our town that are here at the university. So I am a proponent of figuring out how to get the money that the university gives us to go up, to help us pay for the many services that really make Orono what it is, in part because it's a university town.
Cecile Ferguson. Actually, Lori just started answering my question. My question was about the university. I know they don't pay taxes, and my question is, what are your thoughts on how the town can benefit from its relation to the university, whether it's financially or in other matters? Thank you.
One of the things I've been pleased to see is, because a lot of people bring that up, they say, how can we leverage the university? How can we partner with the university? And one of the things we're doing it now with is our youth sports program. And we actually, our Parks and Rec director is a one-man fighting machine. And he is teaming with the university to bring their coaches and their expertise in. And they actually run the whole youth sports program. So that's something that we can leverage them, because we're only expending one person, and they have a whole bunch that are bringing a lot of expertise to the table. There's even a touch rugby team and the whole thing. I thought it was fantastic.
When I normally hear conversations about things that are going on that are happening around the area, whether it be economical or economy-wise, or just things in general, business stuff, there's always a connection with the university. And it seems like they already provide a lot of assistance and at no cost to us. They do a lot of things. I seem to remember kind of just looking on YouTube, kind of following like the old stuff that had happened in here, and they do a lot of things that even with with looking at if there's a spill somewhere, they're involved with it. So we don't have to pay for any of that. So I think it would be unfair to assume that the university has no value or doesn't provide a value because they don't provide money. I think they do provide a lot to the town, and we just kind of have to look at that a little bit more closer to realize exactly what they are doing for us.
So one of the benefits of being a university town is that because we provide services to the university that they do not have themselves, like they don't have a fire department, they don't have a hazmat response team. Our fire department provides those services. And because we provide those services to the university, we are eligible to apply for grants to help us to pay for those costs. And our town is really great, the people who work in our town, at getting those kinds of grants. We've gotten grants for drunk driving, which is basically because we have a lot of that in our town because of the university. So I'm always impressed when I hear this is the cost that we have, but we got a grant that's specifically for this thing, right? And so they're quite good. And one of the reasons we're able to get those grants is because we are serving the university, and they don't have, if they were a bigger university, they would have their own, some of those things on their own. So we get the benefit of being able to apply for grants because we're in this situation, but it doesn't actually cover all the costs.
university has some of the most outstanding people, and it's a resource overlooked. When I speak about a forensic program, having the citizenry here, you know, there are all sorts of people at the university at all stages of knowledge that could step in and help a great deal with this. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the community service. We don't. As far as grants are concerned, you know, there was a thing recently called an economic opportunity zone. I see no movement to follow that up. It would be really nice if we had such a thing here. Our manufacturing, gone. Do we need it? Yes. And it doesn't need to be contaminating the soil or the earth. Thank you.
Yes, we have another question that was phone/emailed in. How do you envision young families to be able to afford buying a house in Orono when we have a tax rate that is within the top 10 highest rates in the state? Surrounding towns all have lower taxes.
Terry.
Terry?
Was that? Oh, sorry. Like I spoke on earlier, I think that the bigger issue is of getting people to stay here. We have kind of forgotten that younger professional population that there is no housing available. I think the issue would be not about affordability, because if you look around, there really isn't a lot available to begin with. So I think that maybe we should be addressing the housing availability first.
When people go to get money from a bank, a mortgage, that's the taxes figured in. So what's the challenge is that there aren't places that are affordable because they take so much to fix. So so I think that the most, and I work with people who are trying to fix houses all the time, and I don't ever hear them saying they're not buying in Orono because of the taxes. And when people approach me and say, oh, I'm so concerned that the taxes are going up and I won't be able to sell my house. I have many people always wanting to buy houses in Orono. There just aren't houses to buy. At the low end, they just cost too much to fix to make them viable. And then there's a finite number. That's why they go pretty quickly in our town. So I'm with Terry that we're missing housing for people who want to live here. And those people haven't been complaining about the taxes. They're complaining about the lack of opportunity to buy a house here.
The viability in our community lies with the children and young families. You know, Orono does a thing that's targeting trailers and trailer parks and has extra costs. And that's where a lot of people began subdividing lots. You know, the amount of land that's demanded to be set aside. Now, cluster developments and stuff is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being able to have a mother-in-law place. You never know what's going to happen in your family. And maybe a real fancy RV might be the only thing to do. And the only way to do it is to register the thing. They don't do that. Many houses, small houses, absolutely outstanding for our community. And, you know, even if they put up a dome house, the kids could go to school economically and love our community and live here. Thank you.
Short answer is I don't expect young families to be able to live here and buy houses at the current rate and the expected rate of where it's going soon. We wouldn't even live here if we hadn't found the right house at the right time at the exact right price, and it's exactly what we wanted. So that's how we ended up in that spot. But you know, and I know there's a lot of talk about attracting folks, get a bigger tax base, and that will bring down the taxes. But you know, you have to look at it the other way, because we very much looked at what the taxes were. And like I'm saying, if it wasn't the perfect house, we wouldn't even be here. We would have moved. right over the town line, still get all the, still get access to all the things we like to do around here, still get access to the Orono Land Trust, trails, and the whole deal. And if we had kids in school, send them to Orono School and have our town pay for it. I mean, that's what a smart person would do.
Hello.
Comp plan question.
Actually, a lot of people already asked that question, so asked and answered. I'm not going to bother you with the comp plan. Megan Gardner, hi. So I was thinking to ask everyone, what do you see as the role of a town councilor? Like, what is the role of a town councilor as you understand it? But I think I'd like to just tweak it a little bit to ask a version of that, like, what's your biggest weakness that you get asked in interviews. So what do you imagine being your personal biggest challenge about taking on this very big responsibility of being a town councilor?
Well, I had the opportunity to run for office and get placed as a town councilor in November of 2 years ago. And so I can tell you that my biggest challenge was my lack of understanding of how long it takes, because the process of government is slow, and the process of government is slow because you have to be deliberate about making big changes with other people's money. And so I run my own business and I get to make the changes because I'm in charge. And so my biggest challenge was that I'm part of 7 people, and many of those people have been serving for a very long time, and they know all the backstory of things about how we got to where we are. So my biggest challenge was, and still is, being able to figure out how to take my ideas of how I want to see things be different and work with people who have been staying a course that's been managing the money and the actions of our town for a long time, and they didn't consider the things because I wasn't on the council before. So that was my biggest challenge, and it still is.
I guess the biggest challenge would be an intolerant mindset, status quo. I'm sorry, that can be changed in a twinkle of an eye. Anybody can be hacked, your computer, your cell phone. This is the future. This is today. This is something new. Do you have to be aware for these changes? Yes, you do. Can we see everything? No. But good oversight will help us make decisions. I think the hardest thing is circles of logic. More socialism is not going to cure the ills of socialism. You have to embrace other ideas. Thank you.
I think, along with Lori, who has her own business and she's used to doing things a certain way, I retired I had some rank when I retired from the Marine Corps. And so when I would go to a meeting and talk about something, it was from a certain level of expertise in that area. And so being part of a group is something I am trained to do, but it is always one of those things where you go, that's not how I would do this. Why isn't everybody else thinking the same way as me? However, I do have a lot of experience in working in groups too, of all different shapes and sizes. So I guess that would be it. Next time, ask a comprehensive plan question, please. That's what I was expecting.
I tend to be very passionate about everything that I do, and that can be everything from my CrossFit family to my friendships to my work to my connection with my employees to every project that I do, even down to working with Health Equity Alliance and the board there. And I can honestly say my biggest weakness is that, and my husband can actually attest to this, is that I tend to, when I'm done with it and I've been so involved in it, I'll go to and say, I don't think I did good enough. I don't know if I did a good job or if they got what they expected out of me. And then I have to kind of get talked off that ledge saying, no, you did an amazing job. So definitely my weakness is I kind of discount myself a little bit sometimes.
Brian?
Just wanted to ask a quick, closely related question. So Brian McGill, so you've all talked about changes you would like to make, which is great. That's why I think turnover and new blood is always good. But as you know, you're not about to be elected the dictator of Orono, right? So I'm just curious. Well, I won't feed you the answers, but I'm just curious what processes and what things you think you're going to have to be able to work with and go through to actually implement change for this town.
I love to talk. I have an example. Innovative thinking. My beautiful fiance has an open house. I'll take this opportunity, February 16th. All are invited, 12 to 5. 3 generations have worked towards this goal. And I think it answers a lot. There'll be it's a classroom instruction, small classes, painting, sewing, arts and craft, cooking, home economics, fiber arts, and interior design. It's up at 777 Main Street in Old Town. Old Town embraced this and they love the idea. Would they like it here? Stop by and see. You might see something new. And it might be very nice to replicate it right here. Thank you, folks.
So the question was about the process.
Process people, what do you have to do to actually make change happen?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. The one thing that is very similar to this, to being in any level of government or in the military is, it's a problem solving machine. Right. And that's the way I always looked at my job, my role in the Marine Corps. I was part of a gigantic problem solving machine. We'd have something come up and everybody would have to get together and come up with a solution. And it was merit based. It was the best solution came out on top. And that's the way I see this process kind of going is, I think it was Patton that said, if everybody's thinking the same, then nobody's thinking. Right. So that's why it's great that we have 7 folks on this committee that are on this council that can come into an issue with 7 different ways of looking at it, and then the best solution wins.
So processes, I mean, obviously when we go into different committees or different types of things, we have to work well together. So it's almost kind of like you have to make sure that everybody plays well on the playground together. I feel that each individual that's currently on the town council was put there for a reason. The community felt that they were the best individuals that could collectively work together, not with a standout individual that's going to call the shots, but everybody together has a piece in what is going on and they've all thought through it, and then they can stand up together and say, through the process, we say this is what it is and stand behind each other collectively. So it has to be working well with each other.
I think that the town council benefits by having people with different backgrounds and knowledge working together. And we had a change this last year where Judy cycled off, and we have a new town councilor that came on, and Cheryl, and that's all to the benefit to have new folks, but we don't actually have any other business owners. So I'm really excited that all of us that are interested in being on the town council are business owners, because that would add the number of business owners that are on the town council. And that we have lots of educators, we have an attorney, and I just think that would be that the process is enhanced, as you said, by having people with different backgrounds.
I can ask a comprehensive question if you want me to. So some people have already answered things related to the comprehensive plan. Most specifically, I think folks talked about housing a lot, which is definitely important. Setting that aside, the comprehensive plan helpfully identifies in each section sort of opportunities and challenges that the town might face. So I'm curious that for you folks, what do you think of as an opportunity that you're like, yes, I want to capitalize on that opportunity that the comprehensive plan mentions? And what are some challenges that you saw in there that you say, you know, I don't agree that we have to focus on that right now. So when you think about the opportunities and challenges, what really speaks to you most apart from some of the things that you've already mentioned?
I hope it's on scale. So in general, the cool thing about doing this is, I know it's going to sound weird, but once I started reading the comprehensive plan, and you can even ask my wife, I kept coming to her like, hey, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe what's going on there. The thing. And a lot of great information. I think one of the challenges, like I think I spoke about this earlier, the challenge between trying to get a little bit of development, but trying to maintain what keeps Orono, which is, for what, from my way I'm looking at it, is everything west of the highway, right? So trying to keep that balance, trying to maintain those open swaths of land that the animals can roam in and create a natural habitat. I think that would be the biggest challenge.
For opportunities, one of the things that I actually do get a little excited about is the park and rec utilities, facilities type stuff that we currently have. So like in particular, the trail systems that we have. I think they're amazing. Our family uses them a lot, and but it also made me think, when there's always those expenses of things like trying to make sure that you maintain them and stuff like that. And I kind of went to thinking about like when we used to have adopt-a-highways, is it possible to have business or organizations have a section of the trails that are adopted and they put a sign that says maintained by the loon or whatever? The challenges for me that I keep coming to is that for any kind of economic growth, people look at industries, placements in the communities. If you have good internet or high-speed internet and good cell service, I find cell service very spotty here, and you have to use Wi-Fi a lot, and our high-speed internet really kind of needs to be upgraded. So that's a big challenge for me.
I love that the comprehensive plan mentions that it wants to have young families be able to afford here. That's come up before, and I think that hasn't moved anywhere because we have some challenges in making this Orono attractive to businesses that build buildings from scratch, build new houses from scratch. And one of those, actually, Dan mentioned, which is we have a minimum lot size that's actually quite large in most of our zones. And so then people have to buy the piece of land, and then also they can only put a single family home on it. And so I think an opportunity would be, and we are looking at this, our committees are looking at the ideas of how we would change some zoning to make it a little bit easier for people to come and build smaller buildings or more units per lot in downtown, not in the open space.
The whole concept of comprehensive plan has enhanced the taxes of the community. One place you can farm, another place you can't have chickens or a certain type. You can't have pigs. Every dirt beyond a yard needs to have an act of Congress. A road of 200 feet cost almost $100,000 dirt road to just put it in. When you start to assess what the rotten thing that this is to our community, Victoria, Texas does not have no zoning, and they work just fine. They have some of the most innovative homes and designed to say to a business like Tenny or Breyer, non-conforming, Mike at Silver's, non-conforming, that's disgusting. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've come to the end here, and I'm going to allow the candidates to all make a final closing statement. Again, I want to thank you all for attending, and mostly I want to really thank the candidates for being willing to run and support the town. So the way I would like the final statements to go, I think we should go the reverse order from our opening statements. So Adam, breathe deep for 15 seconds and then start up, and then we'll move to your, right, 1 minute.
Like I said in the beginning, I'm retired now. I've got nothing but time and interest in what's going on in this town. So I feel like I'd be a good candidate. I would vote for me. On top of that, it's one of those things that my wife and I want to stay here, and we're really hoping that we don't get kind of priced out of it. When you start thinking about like 27, what is too high? 30, 31, 32, what mill rate is too high? I brought one idea that I copied off somebody else for bringing in extra revenue to try to keep those prices down. And I feel like it would go along with every other part of the comprehensive plan. If you've got revenue, you're not trying to put new developments in over here and press what little open space you've got. Young families would be more willing to come here. I feel like that's the direction I would be heading. Thanks.
Ben Franklin said, "You have a republic if you can keep it." That requires activity and people to be aware. I'll tell you, when everything reads the same and you really don't have the scoop or the oversight, and you come in and your words are buried, that's not right. From our reception, from our beautiful country necessitated strength. It's true today as then. Freedom, family, your rights, elder rights, veteran rights, property and business rights. We have a constitution and a bill of rights. The only way to be strong is to have good representation. And if you want to see something different, again, I'm going to put a plug in unabashedly. Yeah, vote for me, but my beautiful fiance's place is called Dreams by Janice. You'll see it across from the mill in Old Town, February 16th, open house. Thank you.
I'd like your vote because I'd like to continue serving on the town council. I've learned a lot in the 1 year and 4 months or 1 year and 3 months that I've served so far. And what I've learned is that this town is run incredibly well, and the people who've been doing the managing of the town are doing a great job, and new ideas are really helpful. And my ideas are quite different than the people who are on the council as far as what I think are the most important things to focus on. I want to continue to be that person who talks about how we're doing as a community for civil rights, and how we're doing as a community for addressing the carbon footprint, how we're doing as a community for lowering our impact on the environment and lowering the costs we pay for energy.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you all for coming and taking the time out of your busy lives to come and listen to us and ask us questions, because obviously it shows that you really find this important and you're really involved within your community, and that speaks volumes. When I first was going to consider this, it had come up to me not only by myself, just through conversations with professionals and individuals in my life, and I kept going back and forth on this because I don't find this as something you should enter into lightly. I think it's very important. Sometimes people go into these kinds of things and then they don't realize what they've actually got themselves into. I've actually been on a town council before, so I know firsthand exactly what it involves. That's why it took me a bit of time to kind of really think through whether or not it was going to happen. I made the decision to do it. I feel that this town's amazing. I feel that the people who are already on your council are amazing, and I want to be another person to add to that equation and to do an amazing job for you. Thank you.
So again, thank you all. And this concludes.